David is 45. He is a senior manager at a technology company. He is also, by his own description, baffled. He has been passed over for promotion 3 times in the past 8 years. Not at the same company, at 3 different companies. In each case, the stated reason was some variation of the same phrase. Difficult to work with at the leadership level. David cannot identify what he does that produces this assessment. His peers like him. His direct reports rate him highly. The pattern continues. Consider what the pattern looks like from outside. In each company, in the months before the promotion decision, David became what his most recent manager described as overassertive. He challenged decisions from above with increasing intensity. He sent emails that colleagues described as combative. He entered a period of friction with exactly the person or committee responsible for his advancement. Then came the decision. Then came the explanation he could not understand. Jung had a name for what David was doing. It was not character flaw. It was not a lack of political intelligence. It was a complex. And understanding that word, in the precise sense Jung used it, is the beginning of an explanation David has never had. This video explores ideas from depth psychology for reflection, not as therapy. If you are working through difficult material, a qualified analyst or therapist can help in ways a video cannot. David, the case in this video, is hypothetical, a composite constructed to illustrate how Jung's theory of complexes applies to a recognizable modern pattern. The concept of the complex is one of Jung's earliest and most original contributions. It predates his break with Freud. It emerged from his word association experiments at the Bergallsli Psychiatric Hospital between 1904 and 1909, where Jung and his colleagues measured reaction times to stimulus words and found consistent irregularities. When a patient hesitated or gave an unexpected response or failed to respond at all, Jung called the cause a complex. Something was interfering with the normal flow of association. In the later essay on the nature of the psyche, published in the Collected Works Volume 8, Jung defined complexes with precision. 12 words. The key phrase is split off. A complex, in Jung's formulation, is not a weakness of character or a deficiency in willpower. It is a fragment of the psyche that has become autonomous, that operates according to its own logic, with its own emotional charge, independently of the conscious ego. The ego does not control the complex. The complex, when activated, can override the ego entirely. Every complex has a nucleus, a core image or experience around which associated emotions and memories have accumulated. The nucleus is typically formed in early experience, often in relation to parental figures. Around the nucleus, over years, a network of associations builds. A particular kind of authority figure, a particular kind of evaluation, a particular kind of power differential. The network is charged. When something in the environment resonates with the network, the complex is activated, and the person behaves in ways that serve the logic of the complex, not the logic of their conscious intentions. The most diagnostic sign of a complex in operation, Jung noted, is the disproportionate emotional response, the reaction that exceeds what the situation warrants, the intensity that arrives before thought, the certainty of a grievance that cannot be fully explained in the terms of the present moment. When David sends the combative email, he is not being irrational by his own phenomenology. He feels entirely justified. The feeling of justification is a sign of the complex. Return to David. The pattern requires a hypothesis about the nucleus of his complex. We cannot know with certainty what formed it. That is work for a clinical relationship, not a video. But the pattern gives us strong indications. 3 companies, 3 promotion processes, 3 periods of escalating friction with the evaluating authority. The evaluation is the trigger. What the complex activated in David almost certainly involves an early experience of evaluation by a significant authority figure, and the experience of that evaluation as unjust or conditional, or involving a kind of power the authority had no right to exercise. This is hypothesis, not diagnosis. But it is not arbitrary hypothesis. It follows the logic of the pattern. Consider the mechanism more carefully. In the months before each promotion decision, David does not feel that he is acting out a complex. He feels that he is finally seeing clearly. The leadership above him has flaws he has been too diplomatic to name. The processes are inadequate. The decisions are political in ways he finds offensive. Each of these observations may be partially accurate. The question the Jungian reading adds is, why now? Why does the clarity arrive in this window, with this intensity, in this recurring three-company pattern? The answer the complex provides is structural. The evaluation by authority activates the nuclear experience. The nuclear experience is charged with an older injustice, or the experience of conditional regard, or the experience of performance being assessed by someone whose right to assess was not accepted. The charge from the nuclear experience flows into the present situation and the present authority figure. David does not experience his managers as themselves. He experiences them, in part, through the lens of whoever originally held that nuclear position. The combative emails are not, in David's experience, attacks. They are corrections of injustice. The difficulty with authority is not, in David's experience, a pattern. It is a response to a specific inadequacy in each company's leadership. The complex is coherent from inside. It provides its own interpretation of events. The person operating within it does not see the complex. The complex is, in some sense, the lens. Jung argued that the complex, once formed, has the quality of a personality fragment. It is not merely an emotion. It is an autonomous structure with its own memory, its own perceptual bias, its own interpretive framework. When activated, it temporarily replaces the ego as the operational center of the personality. The person is, for the duration of the activation, in the grip of the complex. The subjective experience is of heightened clarity and righteous certainty. The external evidence is of disproportionate, self-defeating action. The self-defeating pattern is not unique to professional contexts. Complexes activate wherever their nuclei have a corresponding trigger in the environment. A mother complex activates in relationships with women who carry maternal qualities. A father complex activates with authority figures. A sibling complex activates with peers who are perceived as competitive. The specific content of the complex is formed by specific experience. The mechanism is universal. What distinguishes a complex from a simple bad habit or character limitation is the quality of automaticity. A bad habit can be interrupted by intention. The complex resists intention because the complex is not accessible to the ego in the moment of activation. The ego is the complex, temporarily. The interruption must come before the activation, in the space between trigger and response that mindfulness traditions call awareness, and that analytical psychology calls observing ego. The analytic work with a complex proceeds, in clinical practice, through several stages. The first is recognition, naming the complex, identifying the nuclear experience, tracing the pattern. The second is differentiation, learning to distinguish the complex's charge from the real situation, which requires an observing ego that can be outside the activation while it is occurring. The third is integration, a gradual process of allowing the energy in the complex to be reabsorbed into the wider personality. 3 questions for those who recognize something of David. First, where in your life is there a pattern that repeats across different contexts, different companies, different relationships, different friendships, producing the same outcome? The repetition is the signal. No single context is the cause. Second, in the moments before the pattern enacts, what is the quality of the feeling? Specifically, is it a feeling of sudden clarity, of finally seeing what was obscured, of justified certainty? That quality, the sense of being finally right, is the phenomenology of a complex in activation, not the phenomenology of objective perception. Third, what is the earliest experience you can locate that has the same emotional quality as the pattern? Not the same content, the same quality, the same sense of injustice or conditional regard, or being evaluated by someone whose right to evaluate was not accepted. The nucleus is usually not hidden. It is usually precisely where you would expect it to be if you were willing to look. David, after the third promotion decision, sought coaching. The coach, working from a competency model, suggested communication training. The training was useful. The communication improved. The underlying complex was not addressed because the coaching model did not have the vocabulary for it. The fourth promotion decision is 2 years away. Whether the pattern continues will depend on whether David moves past the level of skill and into the level of psychic structure. Before we close, this video is educational content exploring Jungian psychology. It is not therapy and not a substitute for professional mental health support. The questions above are prompts for reflection, not for self-analysis and clinical depth. If you recognize David's pattern in your own experience, working with a depth-oriented analyst or psychotherapist offers something a video cannot provide: the sustained relationship within which a complex can be examined safely over time. Below this video is a link to 5 questions for beginning shadow work, the related process of examining what the persona has disowned. The complex and the shadow often share material. If this kind of inquiry matters to you, subscribe. We publish 1 essay each Sunday. This is educational content exploring Jungian psychology. It is not a substitute for professional mental health support. If you are struggling, please seek qualified help.